The fast-paced aroma of the millennium, hustling and bustling of modern times, gives us the retrospections of the realm of naturalism up to the realms of Christendom. Paintings, Athens, sculpture, Black Death, knights, and church. These are the few significant terms that we'll be talking about in this video. Welcome to this educational video which talks about the arts in the classical period and medieval period. This video will give you insights on how these arts were developed. So let's begin by looking back to the rich history of every period. What is classical art? Classical art is the backbone of the modern era. It encompasses the cultures of Greece and Roman art, as it endures the cornerstone of Western civilization, as it profounds the rich history that depicts today's what we call classical art. Then there is the great man named Alexander. Is he really great? Or just how the history really tells us that he is? Nonetheless, he destroyed the Persian Empire, conquered the land that Persians colonized before. But then, as Alexander died, his empires were also divided into three empires. That how the Hellenistic period started.
Excuse me, how does Alexander or Persians relate to the arts that we are talking about?
Well, my dear, in classical art, most of the subjects were battle scenes, mythological figures, and everyday scenes. Hence, the art depicts the events that happens at the very moment. It was grounded in a canon of proportions, based on the golden ratio and the ratio of the length of body parts to each other, as it governs the depictions of ideal figures of male and female.
Classical art is divided into two periods, the Greek period and the Roman period. In Greek period, there are two most commonly methods of paintings. First is the fresco, second is the encaustic. Fresco, it is a method of water-based painting on a freshly applied plaster, usually in the wall surfaces. It is for ideal, for murals, while the encaustic is were added and used to paint in a waxed hall. Face painting as a scourge style, also referred to as scourge faces. These are the red figured pottery. In the second period, which is the Roman period, most of the paintings in the Roman period were copied from the Hellenistic Greek painting. Fresco technique was used in a brightly colored background. The division of the wall into a multiple rectangular or tic-tac-toe design. The innovation of Roman painting from the Greek painting is the development of landscape painting.
In classical architecture, Mycenaean had a lasting influence on classical art, architecture, and literature. Temples are now what we call ruins, have consisted of a central shrine or room in an aisle surrounded by rows of columns. These architecture were designed in one of three architectural orders: Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. The greatest classical temple is the Parthenon by Echinus and Callicrates during 447 to 432 BCE. It is ingeniously engineered to correct an optical illusion. The columns were slightly contorted, swollen at the center, and leaning inward. As we summed up the classical period about 500 BC to 500 AD, the forms of art are sculpture, painted pottery, murals, and architecture. Classical art is idealized or perfect. Bodies look active, often nude faces are stoic. Scenes were all about the heroic figures, gods and goddesses, battle scenes, and everyday life. As we transition from classical art to the medieval art, well, let's look back and talk about the events during medieval period. The fall of Rome in 476 CE is the beginning of the medieval period.
And the beginning of the Renaissance in the 14th century was the ending of the medieval period.
Medieval period is categorized also in three distinct periods based on their art styles and characteristics: Byzantine, Romanesque, and Gothic period. In Byzantine, within this milieu, a distinctive style of mosaics and icon painting developed, and innovations in frescoes, illuminated manuscripts, and small-scale sculptures and enamel work would have a lasting influence. In further developing Christian iconography that began during Roman times, images became powerful means to spread and deepen the Christian faith. In Romanesque art, started a largely placed mosaics on the walls of the churches that follow strict frontal poses. On the other hand, the Gothic period, paintings depict popular legends and love stories. A pattern like mille fleurs or thousands of flowers show influence which may have been due to the Crusades.
Sorry to interrupt you, but what is Crusades?
Crusades is a series of religious wars between Christians and Muslims to secure the Holy Land. So painting has been confined in the illumination of manuscript pages and the painting of frescoes on the walls of the churches in cosmopolitan style, elegant, mannered, and sophisticated. Medieval religious art took other forms as well. In the period, architecture was a sign of richness of authority of religion. Beginning with the basilica and central plans used by the Romans, Byzantine architects and designers made huge engineering innovation in erecting domes and vaults. The use of pendatives and squinches allowed for smoother transition between square bases, circular or octagonal domes. In building such elaborate and seemingly miraculous structures, the goal was to create the sense of heavenly realm here on earth, a goal that later Gothic architecture fully embraced.
Another way to show devotion to the church was to build grand cathedrals and other ecclesiastical structures. Most European cathedrals were built in Romanic styles. Romanic cathedrals are solid and substantial. They have rounded masonry arcs and barrels vaults supporting the roofs, thick stone walls and few windows. Around 1200, church builders began to embrace a new architectural style known as the Gothic. Gothic structures, such as the Abbey Church of St. Denis and the rebuilt Canterbury Cathedral in England, have a huge stained glass windows, pointed vaults and arcs, and spires and flying buttresses. In contrast to heavy Romanic buildings, Gothic architecture seems to be almost weightless. Medieval period, which lasted from 500 AD to 1400 AD, was characterized by the political and economic system of feudalism and the authorities' power of Christendom. The forms of the art are stained glass windows, sculptures, illuminated manuscripts, and paintings. This art is to teach religion to people who cannot read nor write. Most subjects are religious, fully clothed. Faces are solemn, using vibrant colors.
This is group number 1.